Hello again, audience. Once again, don't look at that runtime. Just sit back and let my conversation with Hera Alexander about Bunraku wash over you. So, join us, won't you?
Recording too. There's no intro to this anyway. It'll just like come up under the intro, but I'm not gonna I'll just fade in from some sort of lo-fi beats to relax to, as I normally do.
Makes it sound all like nice and cerebral, and then it's just going to be us talking about how beautiful Gact and Josh Hartnett are.
No, it's not. It's not even cerebral. It's the voice I do for the intro on this one is like it's the 2 a.m. smooth jazz radio host. Like, welcome to Let's Get Weird About. Yeah, it's a whole thing.
I love that. That's great. But so no, we were watching it, and I had to I was like, listen, I'm going to mute myself. Mm-hmm. Because I've seen this movie a bunch, and I love this movie, even though it's what it is. And I was like, and I don't want to talk over it because my friend Katja had not seen it. Yeah. And I was like, this is going to be a recurring theme. I'm glad you started the recording, because this is going to be a recurring theme, which is that it simultaneously has no substance.
Oh yeah.
And yet at the same time, it animates itself through that lack of substance, or with that lack of substance.
Yeah.
It is an ornate skeleton calling itself a man. It is a series of animated tropes. Nothing else.
Yeah. Okay. We'll get into it. Okay.
Yeah.
No, we're on the same page, but we're gonna have to loop back around to where we're at now.
Okay. Yeah.
Because first thing we have to let the audience know who you are and what's going on.
Well, that's not important. It's fine. They know.
No, no, it's fine. We got the thesis of the show is that I want to know about people's relationships to media, and so that means
of course
that means I got to know something about you in order to know what your relationship with it is. So
that's okay. Yeah, you got to make points sometimes. I guess.
I gotta stick with the format until we inevitably go off the rails. So the traditional first question is, if someone was to ask, who is Hera, what do you hope the answer is?
What I hope the answer is someone who is a lot of fun and that I can relax around, that I like being around. Mm-hmm. And I would love to be called reliable.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's such an interesting, yeah.
I hope you cannot hear the phone ringing in the background.
Oh, that's fine. It doesn't matter. Now. I got dogs barking outside. It's fine.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I would love to be called reliable, not because I think of myself as unreliable so much as unstable. Oh, okay. And I would love to be able to. I would love somebody to think of me as someone they can go to for, some specific thing. I don't necessarily like the idea of, they can go to me with anything. Right. No, you can't.
Right.
You want to ask me about the Dewey Decimal System? No, I'm not. I can't help you there. There's numbers in it. That's what I got. No, 900 is the reference section. End of list. Yeah.
That's one thing you could be relied upon.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure that there's going to be someone listening going, no, it isn't.
That's a pretty reasonable thing to have something that you feel like is a strength enough that people could come to you and you could feel confident about the help that you can give them, and that you know that they feel confident in coming to you for that. That makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But also just I don't like being mean to people. I don't like. Mm-hmm. I've been mean to people, and I've been terrible to people. Through the course of my life, not just,
oh, sure,
in the past, but I mean, fairly recently.
Sure.
And, I regret it. But I don't want that to be how people think of me. Obviously, nobody wants to be thought of as Yeah, I want to be thought of as the one everybody hates. Like, no, I don't.
I'm sure those people. Oh no, I mean, I know I've met some of those people who like they'd rather be hated than like forgotten. But like, they're out there. But I'd be surprised if they end up on this podcast based on who I know.
Yeah. Well, but also just comforting to be around. I think is. I think that would be what I would love. How for people to view me that way.
If there was something that somebody was going to come to you for, what is that sort of like? What's your dream that you could be relied upon to do? If there's one of those specialties, what's your proficiency score or whatever skill?
Well, lately because I have ADHD.
Yeah.
I can never stick to one thing for too long.
You're in very good comfort. My website and my business cards say serial obsessive. So
that's fairly good. That's really good. I mean, lately it has been voice acting. So talking with Ash especially. Yeah. And Ash will be like, could I ask you to do this thing? And I'm like, yes, excellent. I love this. And actually, Ash and I have had a long conversation about how asking someone for a favor actually endears them to you.
Oh, yeah. I think that's originally a Ben Franklin thing, but it has since been...
Is it really?
I could be wrong. I think there's a quote from him about that, but I know there have been actual studies about that since then where like it's backed up with like in psychological research that they're like, oh, yeah, if you ask somebody to do you a favor, they think they think of you as their friend now.
Yeah. But it's not only that. It's that feeling of especially in creative types, which I'm still dipping my toes in the water there. So I'm not fully calling myself one way or the other. But I have found with creative types that it's also a form of validation.
Oh yeah.
Saying, hey, I need help writing this, or I need art done and I can't do it. I will pay, whether or not like you'll say I'll pay you. Just the fact that you're being like,
Yeah.
I mean, whether or not you should pay them, pay your artists if you can.
If you can.
But and if you agreed on it.
Yeah.
Don't pull a Trump. And I find a lot of the time, just being asked like, hey, it is a way of saying like, I respect your opinion. I think you're good at this thing. Yeah. And you don't get that from people who don't like you.
That's true.
You don't get,
not in creative collaborative fields a lot where it's one thing to be like, hey, can you paint my house? Right. Like, that says, but if somebody's coming to you and saying,
me a house.
Yeah. But if you're like, here's a story, something that I care about because I'm working on it and I want your input and your creative, ideas. That is like inherently it's a collaborative process. That's not something you can do to somebody that you think, oh, well, screw these guys, but I'll exploit them for now. But like, because at least if you care about the project, because like inviting somebody into something like that is so personal. You said that, and I immediately thought about that, about how much it's, if it was a work thing, it would be, hey, I think you're good at this thing. Let's go. But, especially with indie projects, especially like audio drama, but like, also a lot of creative stuff. With personal projects, it's saying not only do I respect your opinion, but I feel comfortable sharing this with you, and I think that we will work together well. Oh yeah,
and that goes beyond just being professional.
Oh yeah.
Though, I mean, obviously there are those relationships in creative fields where it's like, that is a purely professional thing, but that's still not enmity. I don't remember what the question was.
I don't know. We're like 5 miles away from the question now. This is too interesting. For the record, there's no such thing as digression on this show. Like, there's no such thing as like off topic. We're just going to go where it goes. I will loop us back around to what I want to talk about, what we're here to talk about, because I really, really want to talk about Bunraku later. But before we do, I wanted to say, like, it also occurs to me, like, the amount of trust it takes to give somebody else like a part of your project and say, I am entrusting this to you, and I know that you're going to bring, the art or the this particular character or the music or something,
Yeah.
I know that you're going to do a good job with it, for something that I care about, is like so it means a lot. I am not a parent, but it is something like a parent relationship where you're like, this is a little part of myself that I'm going to hand off to you.
I'm going to reference somebody that I don't like referencing, not
Sure.
because he's a particularly terrible person. I just kind of think he's a dick. But
Cool.
there
Fair enough.
is a bit in a Jerry Seinfeld stand-up thing
Okay.
from like 20 years ago where somebody asked him what his favorite Seinfeld episode was. And he said something that is it's so minor and it's so passing and it's such a commonly used phrase, but at the same time it always sticks with me, which is he just says, I don't know, they're all sort of my babies, you know, and they're and I'm like, yeah, like, I mean, it's not, like you put so much time and effort and again, talking with Ash about various projects that I don't want to like reveal, but we have. And actually, my girlfriend Dee and I as well have like projects that we stuff that we talk about. Some of which has been like released on like Tumblr or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, where there's so like I will be sitting there and I'll be like, what if like this thing happens and like this and we can have that, and then like I'll hit the end of that and go, that happened to me, and like that's how that I reacted to that, and I recognize that as poor and I'm using it as a flaw here, and I'm this is exactly how I would handle this situation and this is how I would want to, but like you can't not put yourself in your writing, in your creativity.
Any sort of I mean, Adam Savage, who is somebody I do like referencing, talks about how there's so many different forms of art are storytelling, and I personally think that there's no way to tell a story, like to be creative, to tell stories that come from you without like putting yourself into it. If you every single creative decision you make comes from some experience you've had, some thought you've had, some part of yourself. And if you're somehow managing to create art without putting your own like heart and soul into it, even a little bit, you're probably like failing. Like I almost can't imagine that that it would be possible to do it at all, even when
you kind of can't.
Yeah,
I would argue that you can't, because I'm going to say a couple of cliches, and I'm going to repeat something that somebody else has said much better than me.
Oh, sure.
And I just don't remember who it was. But it was it's about how all art is political, and what people think that means is all art is some kind of jab at like a no. What it means is your concept of what you are drawing, what you're writing, what you're making, what you're programming, what you're whatever, has been thoroughly informed by, well, the society around you, which is like, I don't want to be like, that's politics.
Yeah. No, but like what you think is normal is a political stance. Whether or not you think that it's political, whether or not you think it's political or not, it is, because the definition of normal is a political statement. And so you trying to have no politics in something is itself a political statement about what is normal. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, there's two things here. One is the thing that I saw that was much better put, which was if you just paint a house, like Thomas Kincaid is famous for just painting a house, but what he thinks of as a house is thoroughly influenced by the culture that he grew up in. What he wants to paint as a house is thoroughly what he thinks of as relaxing is like you can say, oh, it's devoid of that. The other is that I saw somebody point out a long time ago that during one of many gamer hissy fits about women in video games, that so many gamers seem to think that there are two genders, male and political. And that is correct. That is how I think of it every time. And I think of it like, and if you try to remove women from your game, that is way more political than include, like, that is just so much. That is, and there's this idea that like the default is somehow apolitical, but
Yeah.
what is default is deeply political. Like
Yes,
everything
exactly.
is, but like,
Yeah. 100%.
the personal is political, blah, 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 blah.
If you don't mind me asking, what sort of kid were you?
Ooh. Well, in case you can't tell, hyperactive.
Okay.
My parents used to love this. I love this bit of information. They wouldn't like make me sit down to eat like lunch. They would just sort of put a sandwich on the table, and they'll be like, "She'll get it." Like,
exactly.
And I would like get like, and to this day, I have found myself pacing and eating like on my phone because I'm like, I got to think about this thing, but I can't do it while sitting down.
I know the type. Yeah, I know the type.
Growing up, I was also I was so bad about doing and then turning in homework. Both sides of that, like not just doing it, but turning it in.
Yeah.
But then I would go into class and I would ace a test, which is, it sounds like a brag, and it is. But it also it's deeply frustrating for me too, because my parents would be like, and my teachers would be like, it's frustrating to see her. Well, it wasn't her at the time, but we're doing that now.
Yeah.
It's frustrating to see her, pass this test and then never turn in a homework assignment. And I wish I had like the presence of mind to have responded with something like, "Bitch, me too." Like, it's really, I don't like it either. Like,
yes.
I had, yeah. So, like I remember I had a physics class where he told the class that on the first day, don't do this. Don't do this. He told the class, if your final score for your final test is higher than your final overall score, then your final test score becomes your final overall score. He should not have told me that. I didn't turn in a single homework assignment. So like my grades went like F, 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 A. Because I got a 100% on the exam. Yeah. And I am going to brag about that because it was in high school, so it's such a minor thing to brag about. Like, fuck it, it was high school physics. Woo! Yeah,
there's nothing wrong. That's just optimized. Like,
yeah.
you looked
in math.
You literally went like, what is exactly the amount of effort that I need to do? Like, and I'm not gonna, I don't need to do anything extra for this. It's perfect.
I slept through that class because it was a 7:30 in the morning class, which. That's another thing. For the record, this is off topic. We're never going to be on topic 100% of the time. But don't make teenagers get up at 6 a.m. to go to school. Don't
100%.
Don't do that.
No.
What? No. Like that's so mean.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I can 100% relate. I was the exact same kind of kid with the could ace a test without studying, but also could not turn in an assignment to save my life.
And couldn't study as well.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where you're like, it sounds when you said that to other kids, they're like, they think you're some sort of genius, which is a terrible thing to tell another child. But like, what it also like the number of skills that I didn't pick up as a kid, and I'm sure where you're like, I don't know how to study. Like, I don't know how to take notes because I never needed to until it was too late. And then that skill just never came.
I have tried to take notes for D&D sessions, and I have sat there and looked at them and gone, I know what I wrote here.
Yes.
And this all makes sense, but I don't know what this half means, because this is the part where I stopped being able to focus.
Yes.
And it's about 30 minutes into the session.
Yes.
And so this just says beans. And I don't know what beans refers to, and nobody else at the table does. So
it's like, or like half a page of notes and then just doodles, just fucking weird ass shit that goes coming across your mind.
And then you get these moments where like, I saw a Tumblr post that was like, did you all study like this? And I had to be like, no, I don't. Yeah. I'm not even going to read the rest of this post. No. Did I study like? No, I didn't. And if I had studied, I actually would have done way better, and I would be in a better place. But like oh God, I'm so bad at studying if it's not just reading the thing.
Oh yeah. Like it's a skill that you have to learn.
Yeah.
And it takes a long time. And so it's one of those things that if you weren't forced to do it by our school system, you're kind of, unless you want to dedicate a whole, year of your own life to just trying to learn how to do all these things that other people kind of picked up just because you were, disorganized and or ADHD and or just smart enough to be like, oh, screw it, I'll just do it. Like
yeah. There's this interesting thing when I was at college, at a college that I will not name because I don't want to give them any publicity because reasons. But which is that I have found that I will read a passage or a chapter or a book or whatever, and I'll go, yeah, that's what happened in the book. And somebody will go, what were the themes? And I'll go, book. That's what I got. But then we'll start talking about it. And the second we start talking about it, I can actually sit there and go and start pulling things out and saying, oh, actually, hang on. I am much better at that with things that I'm not familiar with. So I found that I was a little bit better at, this is again going to sound like a brag, but I was better at like analyzing literature when it was in another language, specifically Greek.
Oh, sure.
I loved learning Greek. Greek was so much fun to learn. Yeah. And I don't remember any of it. Don't ask me.
Oh, I'm a classics minor, and I do not remember a stroke of Latin. It's gone. It's gone.
Excellent. We will have a lot to talk about because I went to a great book school, and I read and translated like Plato and Aristotle and stuff like that. And I will bitch about dative part. It doesn't matter. So I find that like it kind of like the barrier helped me slow down a little bit and start noticing those things a little bit better and saying, it's really interesting. Like I read just talking about the Meno, Plato's Meno, in reading it in English, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, yeah, Socrates is blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then we went and translated it, and I noticed so many more things, and it wasn't just rereading it. It was sitting there and going, hang on. He presents 3 options here, but he drops an option later. And just, neat stuff like that. Yeah. And,
interesting that,
and I find that, not to stop you, but like, I do find that interesting because I feel like that's a form of critical reading that I just I suck at because I can't read a thing and go, oh, these are the questions I have about this piece of media,
right?
Which I think is like the opening. If you want, if you're listening to this and you want to get good at at critical reading, question things, question everything. It's a lot easier to do with paintings for some reason. Yeah, but like, sit there and you go, why did this guy walk in right now? Why did he say this? Why? My go-to right now is or not right now, but for the past couple of years has been Frankenstein. But like, why does Victor go into fugue states? Why does the monster quote this thing? Why did? And some of that is questions for the author, and sometimes that's questions for the character, and that's much better. But it's a lot also easier to do if you're talking with someone. And it's a lot easier to do with, in my case, defending Victor Frankenstein, which y'all got to stop making me do that. I don't like it.
We all have those characters that you're like, I swear to God, I don't like this character, but I will defend them to the end of the earth for some reason.
Because you're all wrong about why they're shit. Okay.
Yes. Oh my God. When people are wrong, when people don't like something for the wrong reasons, it's like, no, it is shit, but you're wrong about why it's shit. Oh my God.
That's so much more frustrating than people liking things for the wrong reason. Like, people liking things for the wrong reasons.
Stay tuned for the day when I have, stay tuned for the day when I eventually make my Starship Troopers 4-hour epic. Because, oh my God, does everybody get discussions about that book wrong because they got tainted by the fucking movie. Anyway, sorry.
I do want to hear that. I have heard that the book is a little bit more. So I've just heard. I've never read it, so I can't say. But I have heard that the book does tend to be a little bit more. It's Heinlein, right?
Oh yeah.
So it tends to be a little bit more Heinlein.
It's not the most Heinlein book, but it is very Heinlein, and it's not a war. Well, it's not a war book. It doesn't have action in it. It's not a shoot 'em up action thing. It's a really slow plotting, like, character development of a guy growing into a man and the kind of weird world that he lives in, which is all just a bad idea that Heinlein had about like veterans should rule the world, basically. Terrible idea. But it's like not fascism. Like that's the thing, is it's like not fascism really. And it's not an action. But then people, everybody gets excited about all of the wrong parts of it. Like there's the power armor and the bugs and all these things, which are incredibly minor parts of the actual book. And then we get Verhoeven, who comes in and was just trying to make himself a bug movie and got a property slapped on top of it. And he's like, well, what if we made it about, Nazis? And in Paul Verhoeven style, just did it with the most sledgehammery way possible. Great. No notes. But then it's polluted the discussion of an entirely separate piece of media.
That actually does sort of that does in my opinion stay on topic with the movie that we watched.
Sure.
And I'll explain why.
Okay.
And that is
let's pivot onto the thing then. All right.
Well, because there's another Heinlein property, I believe, that got a similar treatment.
Ooh, okay.
I think it's Heinlein. It's All You Zombies, which
my God, we're gonna talk about fucking All You Zombies.
You got so hyped there.
Sorry.
I'm so happy. No. You're fine. Because All You Zombies, the story is, we're not going to talk about like the politics of it right now because oof.
No, it's so weird. It's such a fucking weird ass. Oh my God.
But then they were like, hey, let's make it a movie. And like you kind of hear that and you go, cool. Like I would love like an interesting in-depth science fiction movie that's not you put a plot about a bomber in. Great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Why? And it just reminds me of the Susie Izzard bit about the American version of the movie's always got like more explosions and yelling and cursing and like, but it's also more watchable. Like
if you gave, I can't, because of the way that Hollywood works, I cannot name a transgender director, which is a real shame. But if you gave a good transgender director, I guess I can. The Wachowskis, right?
Oh yeah,
yeah. There you go.
We sort of forget about them because they haven't.
Well, admittedly, I wouldn't. I'm actually. It might be a different kind of train wreck, the Wachowskis version of All You Zombies, but it would be glorious. It would look so good. Oh my God, it would be
so much fun.
It would be
Jupiter
really
Ascending.
Fun.
Jupiter Ascending was another movie that I was like, oh, I watched that. Yeah. And then somebody was like, what was it about? And I was like, man, Mila Kunis is in it. And
that is a movie. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
I need that's on my list. I need to see it someday. But but like if you give a thoughtful director that property and said, could you please make a movie out of this? They could make a really like just throw out all of the like Heinlein-ness of it and just take the basic bare bones, and you would be able to make a really interesting thought study about gender relations and then also time paradoxes. Go ahead. Yeah. And but I think it's called, oh God, what is the Ethan Hawke movie called?
That one. The movie version of it. That's
Predestination. And it's God, like it's so fucking bad. It's just the worst.
You ever see a movie and you go, this could have been an hour-long episode of a miniseries?
Yes. Yeah.
Like you could have cut out this whole back half. This would have been so much the better for it.
I mean, like it is itself an episode of The Twilight Zone. Like if you took the short story and just like, because the thing is, it's also told entirely in the context of one person at a bar telling it to a bartender.
Yeah.
Like that's a bottle episode. Like that's all you have to do.
Yeah.
You could pay one, maybe two actors, depending on how you want to cut it. And then like an afternoon on a soundstage, like that's an episode of The Twilight Zone right there. It's great.
Yeah. And you know what? I know a lot of people like to say, there are some episodes of The Twilight Zone that are deep and, brooding. And there are some episodes that are like, wasn't that fucked up? Anyways, I'm Rod Sterling. And you know what the problem is? Even those episodes have a point to make.
Yes.
The problem is they've only got one point to make, and they just make it throughout the whole episode.
I'm Rod Sterling. Do you want to see some fucked up shit? Yeah, me too. Let's go.
And you're like every single time you're like, yeah, Rod, that's why I'm here. Last time you got deleted from existence by someone who could see through the fourth wall. So I need to know. Actually, I kind of want to know about you, my man, like right now. But the thing is, to bring us to our major point, which is people love spectacle.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with liking spectacle.
Oh, no.
But you do have to recognize how much of it is in so much of what you watch.
Yeah.
Like there is the spectacle that like a lot of people hearing that might have thought like, oh, like car crashes or not car crashes. Yeah, car crashes, but like car chases is what I meant to say. And like kung fu
car crashes
scenes.
also, yeah.
Yeah. And like kung fu scenes and action sequences and like all that stuff. Yeah, that's part of it, but also the entire movie you're watching.
Yeah. Literally
every
image that you see on the screen can be spectacle.
Yes. And that is Bunraku.
Right.
That whole movie.
That whole movie. So, okay, I need to know, did you see this in the theaters, or would you come to it a little later?
I think I came to it like around, because it was from 2011.
Yeah, 2010, technically, I guess.
Oh, 2010?
Yeah.
Whatever. I saw it on Netflix.
Okay.
But I saw it on Netflix around 2011.
Yeah.
And I think probably 2011, 2012, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And I had an unregistered with myself crush on Josh Hartnett.
Oh yeah.
And so he's a handsome man.
Oh yeah. Very charismatic.
It's also how I ended up watching Lucky Number 11 like at the same time.
That's a lot of good Josh Hartnett in there. If you have an unregistered crush on Josh Hartnett, I'm pretty sure that Lucky Number 11 could register that shit for you. He spends a lot of that movie in a towel.
I think you're underestimating how completely oblivious I was. I still wasn't medicated for ADHD because I didn't know.
Oh yeah.
So I lacked what's the word? Introspection. And that sounds fake, but I started taking Adderall, and like a couple weeks later, my brain was like, "Hey, you're not a boy," and I was like, "What? No, what? Oh, fuck! Like shit! Like I have to deal with this now." You know,
that's the first time I've heard that story. Yeah, that's not uncommon. Okay, so I feel like we've probably been dragging the audience along through all of this. Let's give them a little bit of information. Can you give me like the broadest possible explanation? What is Bunraku?
The movie or the art form?
The movie. Okay. What we're talking about? Yeah.
So not a plot synopsis. You're looking for just sort of like a description in metaphorical terms.
If you were trying to sell the audience on it, what would you try to say? Tell them that what it was.
It would depend on the audience.
Sure. Yeah.
Because to some people, I would say, it's got some really fun fight scenes. Mm-hmm. To some people, I would say the set design is amazing. And it's just a really pretty movie. Like the colors are really interesting. To some people, I would say, it's an interesting juxtaposition of the cowboy and the samurai narrative, which sounds like a joke, but it's not.
No.
And to some people, I would say you should see it because Gact is in it, and you'd be surprised how often that last one works. Like I'll go through all of those in order, and then I'll hit that last one, and they'll be like, "Fine, fuck."
Yeah, so Bunraku is like it's just like a 2010 movie, directed and screenplay by a guy whose name is not blue on Wikipedia. I'm looking at, which is a bad sign.
It's not a good sign. No,
I feel bad for this guy because it was like his one shot and it did not work out.
That's a shame.
Yeah, kind of.
Kind of interesting though. I think we'll probably get into it later. I actually am glad that we only got one movie in this style.
Oh, sure.
Because I think it would dilute a point that I will talk about later.
Yeah. And sort of at its most basic, the plot is that like there's this city where it's been taken over by a evil dude and a lone stranger, and then also a second lone stranger come in, and they hijinks ensue and they take him down. That's like it really is when you say Western and samurai, it's because like it is the plot of like half a dozen Westerns and also that plot of a half a dozen samurai movies smashed together.
Well, because also, Westerns, a lot of Westerns are just like Kurosawa movies that, a Western director or screen or company kind of went, we should do that with guns. And you know what? They were right. Like, I don't often say it like that, but like, the original movie is so good, and like the Western version is still good, but just in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a completely reasonable, like those two genres map super well on each other, just in terms of their archetypes and the structure of their plots. And then because there were separate industries making, there was a big samurai movie industry in Japan. There was a giant Western industry here in America and also in Italy and Europe and such. Yeah. And they could just cross-pollinate really freely, and they could look at each other's things and be like, I'm going to take from those guys. And the other guys would be like, I'm going to take that shit back. And we're going to in a way, it feels kind of collaborative, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually, I tried to look up because I thought that there was, I could have sworn that there was a Kurosawa movie where it was originally a Western and but I can't find it.
Yeah.
I could find like, Ran and Throne of Blood, which are, Shakespeare plays, which is not the same thing, but, I couldn't find a Western that he had. I can't say copied because that's not what happens.
Adapted.
Adapted. Used. Transformed. And this is actually a thing I have, and something that I realized how perfect it is that you and I are talking about this movie in particular, which is that. The same story told over and over again with minor variations has value each time in those variations. And I like that. I to shrink it down, I like Philip Glass. I think that if you hear a story and you go, man, that is almost exactly what, the story I want to write, but I would change these parts. I need you to write that. I need you to write that and change those parts because that makes the story different. And
yes.
And so the reason that I find it great that you and I are talking about this is because you mentioned having a werewolf project on the burner. And my girlfriend Dee and I are writing a werewolf project.
Okay.
And
cool.
that's, a very vague term, but given that I met you in a context of a science fiction audio drama, and D&I's project is also science fiction because she likes Farscape, and I haven't watched it, but I have a feeling I will.
Farscape's one of those ones that I know I'm gonna like, but I have to. I've come to the conclusion that I will never actually watch it until somebody drags me into a rewatch podcast, and I am the newbie who's seeing it for the first time. Oh, and I know I'll love it, but that's the only thing that will actually get me to watch it.
Run a I can't. This joke won't make a whole lot of sense to you, but like run a seminar on it where you have like two people who have seen it over and over again, and you've got like a room full of other people who have all not seen it and are seeing it for the first time. You got those two people like guiding the discussion. That was actually how my college experience was. That was literally every class.
Well, I definitely love when people take similar stories and just do them over, like either they take somebody else's thing and do a fanfic of it or a rework or do you know about, this is one of my favorite things in the world. There's 3 movies, Rio Bravo, El Dorado, and Rio Lobo. Do any of those strike a bell with you?
Those sound so familiar. Is that, hang on a second. That's the one where they made the movie and then like a few years later they made it again. But was that a John Wayne?
They were
movie?
all 3 of them were John Wayne movies.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they just kept remaking it with like different production values and
yes.
I have heard about that.
Yes, it's one of my favorite things. I discovered it organically because I watched both movies and was like, these are the same plot with like about half the cast swapped out or more than half the cast swapped out. What? And then I looked it up and they have the same screenwriter. They're directed by the same guy. They're just like 5 years later. And they said, you know what? Do it again.
Well, I've got two other examples for you. Yeah. One of which is nerdy media. Niche media.
Sure.
And the other is another Western, which is it James Garner, Support Your Local Gunfighter and Support Your Local Sheriff.
Okay.
Those are not the same movie.
Yeah.
But they are very similar movies with a key point changed.
Cool.
Here and there. Which like I do like Support Your Local Gunfighter. I do like it. And the other is apparently one of the most enduring worm fanfics.
Okay.
Changes one thing.
Yeah.
And everything else ripples from there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I want to use that to pivot to fanfic, but I'm going to back up just a half a sec to Rio Bravo, Rio Lobo, written by a woman named Leah Brackett, who also was one of the first writers on Empire Strikes Back. She's credited as creating a bunch of those characters, although I think none of her stuff actually made it. But she also was the one who adapted a Raymond Chandler novel called The Big Sleep to screen.
Go. Sorry.
Yeah. So, and in her adaptation, she added a scene where there's a whole thing where she the villains are trying to lure the hero through a door in which he will be led into an ambush. And the hero figures this out and pulls the gun and says, no, you go through the door. And like, I'm going to shoot you if you don't. And they like run through the door and get shot. That scene, exactly the same scene, happens again, but in Rio, I think it's in Rio Bravo, one of the 3 Western movies. Yeah. And I'm like, Leah, you're just doing the same shit again as well. Which I absolutely love.
Well, that's also pretty interesting. Talking about also changing minor things having a big impact. Okay, so my info for this comes from a Folding Ideas video.
Okay.
Or 3. Which, not a bad place to get things. By the way, watch Folding Ideas on YouTube. He's great. But where he was talking about the 50 Shades of Grey movies, and it's the information, and he points out that there was a scene that the director of the first movie wanted to add like a line where if I recall correctly, that wasn't in the book, where is it okay I assume it's okay to talk about horny things on here?
This is the horniest podcast I produce. Yes, please.
Cool. So like, the director wanted to add a scene where what's her name?
Dakota Johnson, whatever her character is.
Whatever her character is.
Yeah.
Deploys her safe word, and the guy ignores it.
Yes.
Which leads to her leaving.
Right.
But that makes sense.
Yeah.
But in the original book, apparently, she just gets upset by the idea of the situation at all and just leaves.
Okay.
And that is a completely different story.
Yeah.
And oh my God, I forgot his name. Guy behind Folding Ideas.
Daniel something? David something?
Dan. Oh my God. He pointed out like what a big difference that makes. And you know what? He's right. Like it is a huge difference.
Dan Olsen, for the record.
Dan Olsen, thank you. Yeah. But yes. So like just minor, that's one sentence. Apparently it provoked a screaming match from the author who, was there for an hour yelling about it. Like, sometimes you gotta take the L and say, oh, that's a really good point. Like, that's a really good addition. Like, don't you want the best? Anyway.
No, some people don't. They want it to be theirs more than they want it to be good.
Yeah. Oh, that is a good point.
Yeah.
That is 100% correct. Anyway.
Okay. So we could talk because I got a whole bunch of discussion I want to do about fan fiction now, because the idea of like changing a single thing and seeing how it works out is great.
Yeah.
But we've barely talked about Bunraku, and I really do want to talk about Bunraku.
We should at some point mention the movie that I'm on the podcast for.
Yeah, we're only like 40 minutes in. I hope you don't have anywhere to be tonight, because we still have to talk about. Okay, great.
You just cut out the whole first 50 minutes.
Like, no, fuck that. It's good shit. I'm leaving that in. I'm just gonna make our audience fucking like not make them. They're gonna enjoy it. It's good. It's good discussion.
Gonna preface it with like, I promise we will get to Bunraku. It will take a minute. And then it'll take 39 minutes after that minute.
Yeah, it's fine. Just hang out. I already talked to Jack about Sucker Punch for 2.5 hours. So we're not anywhere near.
I'm not going to lie to you. I want to get every person who's on your podcast to get you to watch like just a poorly regarded movie. If I can get somebody on here to make you watch Hudson Hawk, I will do everything.
Hudson Hawk. Hudson Hawk's amazing.
Well, then, Scott, why were we not friends 45 years ago before I was born? Because I love that movie. It feels like a comic book in a way that no Marvel movie has ever succeeded in doing. We'll talk about that some other time.
Yeah, that's a whole different episode. Yeah. Hudson Hawk is a cartoon movie. Yeah, more than anything else. Yeah. Okay. So, but talking about comic book movies that are basically comic books, just, you flip the pages 24 times a second. Bunraku is just impeccably stylish.
It's beautiful.
Yes. Like if anybody isn't aware, Bunraku, the actual art form, is a shadow play puppetry style out of Japan, where it is told with puppets, against screens, and it is that's where they're pulling this name. And I think they did so in order to sort of highlight the fact they knew that they were being this is meant to be theatrical, not cinematic in a way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It is highlighting the spectacle of the thing.
Yes.
It is saying this is all the story, the words, everything. It's all ephemeral. All the sets are designed to look sort of like paper. It's saying these are paper thin. This is surface level and nothing more.
Yeah.
But there is nothing wrong with the surface. There is still value to be had in the skin of an apple.
Yes.
Sorry. It's really crappy cliche thing to say, but that is exactly my feeling about this.
Yes.
It is. And the thing that astounds me is, yes, it all does look like paper, but man, building things out of paper takes a lot of effort.
Yeah.
Man, it takes so much work. And a lot of work goes into that thing that you kind of dismiss, which is not a major point but it is one that I do want to point out. The set designers for this should have been given an award.
It's amazing. And it reminds me so much of, I'll pull out my movie snob credentials here, because I'm going to say it reminds me so much of the German expressionist style.
Does it?
Yes, to me it does, because it's not meant to be accurate. It's meant to be evocative.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Yeah. And also just to me, if that style had been brought into color, the color use that's done in Bunraku is what they would have been doing. It's very go ahead.
No. Finish what you were saying, then I'll ask my question when you're done.
Oh, no. That's basically the point. I was it just reminds me so much.
I can't really, I'm not going to lie to you, I can't actually picture what German expressionist design would be, but I keep thinking Metropolis and...
yes. And a better example would be something like Nosferatu. Yeah.
Very sort of exaggerated.
Yes.
In a sense, it's about the archetypes moving in a particular field.
Mm-hmm.
And do I want to do this? So Plato's Cave.
Yeah.
No.
No. It's a perfectly appropriate subject to bring up in this particular case.
It is, and I think calling it Bunraku is a much better choice than calling it Plato's Cave, because that would be so on the nose. Listen, this movie doesn't have subtlety. All of our hams have hands. Okay, this is the most obvious in almost every way.
Yeah.
With some very minor exceptions, but at the end of the day, there's no substance behind it, but you don't need substance. There are so many times where, yes, there are so many times where there are words that are said and they mean nothing, because what is important is not the words, it is the saying.
Yes.
There's a bit where somebody's like, water is not blah, 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 blah. And it's all very poetic and meaningless, but that it's said because that is the time when words like that are said. And so words like that need to be in this.
Yes.
And if you gave them too much meaning, it would take away from the rest of the movie. You do have some bad dialogue, just straight up not good. One or two of Ron Perlman's lines are not good. He's doing his best.
Ron Perlman showed up.
He's still Ron Perlman, but he did the best with what he had. I think the actors who have, or the characters who have the most personality and character traits, I would argue, are Alexandra, played by Demi Moore, who is the only person who really brought more than two emotions to the whole deal.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the actor's name, but the guy who played Killer number 2.
Kevin McKidd. Oh my God. who
like
apparently did a bunch of that choreography himself. Like,
did he really?
He did not have a stunt double. Yes, he did. He learned how to do all of that.
Jesus, because his choreography is some of my favorite. Oh, sorry. Talking about design. Okay. Something that I find really neat, and I only realized it on like last week when I watched it when I thought we were going to record on Friday.
Yeah.
He's got like a pretty standard suit, except his vest is like a diagonal slash across his chest.
Okay.
Did you notice that?
No, I didn't. I missed that entirely.
Go look. It's like a thing. And I always find that neat because it reminds me of like that trope in samurai movies where the guy has like his kimono on, but he's got the one sleeve down, and so his thing makes a cut across his chest. And so it's that sort of like, it's it's Western, but it's very clearly like the internals are, there's you can't ignore that style. Yeah. I still think that it's interesting that the main focus is on sort of Western things, which I don't love, but feels very accidentally on the nose. But also, I mean, Americans invading and taking by violence a town as yet another one of those, like, I think we accidentally hit a point here. Because by the way, for those of you who haven't seen it, this movie does not take place in the U.S. or in Japan. It's just sort of nebulously, quote, east of the Atlantic, which I assume just means nebulously Europe somewhere.
That's actually, I prefer that version of their of their world building, where they're like, we're in a place and there are people and it is a town. I found myself being possibly my biggest critique of this movie is when it tries to explain itself. The opening narration of like, there was a time when humanity warred with ourselves and we killed everybody, and then we had a nuclear war and humanity banned guns, and then we started in a town. And I'm like, you could have cut all of that shit and just started with, we're in a town, okay, let's go, and then just didn't address the fucking no guns thing. I like the Bunraku as a piece requires so much buy-in from the audience that you have to suspend your belief all of the way, that just like, don't even throw me a bone trying to explain why your world makes sense. There are no guns because it would be less cool if there were guns. Like, it's like, because you want to have fist fights and sword fights. Like, don't try to explain yourself.
I was talking about this with some friends about like, you actually, this is a movie that I think would have been is kind of fragile in its premise, not because there isn't a lot of premise there, but because the more info you give, the more plot you give, the weaker the movie becomes.
Yes, exactly.
Because then it becomes, well, why wasn't the rest of the movie like this? That sort of the bit at the start, I would actually say that the bit at the start is sort of like, there was a war, we killed everybody, no guns, got it, let's go on.
Yeah, because it is to get it out of the way.
The important bit is like, is a thing that's said in the narration, which I love.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. I love the narration.
Yeah. Except for like, there's a line that I have described as certainly in the movie, which is when he jumps onto the prison and punches a guy, and the narration says "Happy birthday, fucker," with no relation to anything that was said or done in the rest of the movie. And if you're sitting there going, well, it's got to have some connection. Wrong. It doesn't. I just watched it. You're wrong. I've seen this movie a bunch of times. I still don't know where that line is from. Nobody mentions the birthday. Nobody says fucker except for the narrator, I think. And then later the narrator calls back to his own line. Anyway, but there is a bit in the opening narration where he says, basically, this story has been told. It has been told over and over again. It will be told over and over again. And we're not doing anything different here. Yeah. We're not only are we not doing anything different here, we don't want to, and there is so much in that to me of like, we know we're not telling a different story. And in fact, we're barely telling a story. Oh, yeah. Like, in fact, we're telling you what the story is without telling you a story. Yes. If that makes sense, which sounds fucking, I'm going to sound pretentious like 80 times in this.
It's fine.
But I'm not going to stop either.
We're talking about basically a puppet show. It's like I think we're excused for being pretentious because it's like by definition kind of not.
Yeah. And there's so many moments like that focus on the underpinnings of the story rather than the story. And there's so many moments of like there's a fight scene between Josh Hartnett and Gact, which is a fucking sentence to say.
Yeah.
And there's a bit where it shifts from like a sort of a normal day, which is day is a really harsh word, like a really heavy word to deploy here because it's sort of just nebulously there, like the sunlight, quote unquote, never feels heavy enough to really feel like sunlight because it's not going to be. It's watered down.
Yeah.
But there is a point where it turns to rain, and I say turns to because literally, not only does the sky do you get like a top down view of the light going from yellow to blue, not going off because that's not how movies work, but going from yellow to blue, but you get to hear they added effects of like a winch of somebody like did you notice that? Like
no, but I believe
like,
it.
Of like you hear this like squeaky noise of like a wheel or something like that, or a pulley as it shifts from yellow to blue and the rain starts coming down. And I love that. That's so good. Like it's just that sort of like, listen, this is about the spectacle. By the way, during that scene, they put on a record, which you may not have noticed at the start. I had to have that pointed out to me. That music then becomes part of the soundtrack.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I missed that. That's cool.
And once I started noticing that, I started realizing how much of this movie feels dreamlike, not in its logic.
No, but in its presentation.
Yes, exactly. So you're watching something and you're watching it because everything is telling you, don't look at here.
Yeah.
Don't look at the sets. It's all paper. Who cares? Watch the action. And then you watch the action and there's nothing there. But there is something to be watched and there's no connection. Or not no connection. There's some part of your brain that's looking for something else, but it's not there.
Yeah. Well, like, and they're calling attention to the artifice is something that they're doing over and over. There's a scene I absolutely love where Kevin McKidd as Killer Number 2 is talking to some unnamed underling. It doesn't really matter. And the guy calls him on a phone. And they do a stage trick, which is that they make the wall behind the guy who's on the phone transparent, and Kevin McKidd is on a separate set there on his phone to imply, which is the kind of thing you would do if you couldn't cut to a separate location. But you're in a movie, you absolutely could cut through a separate location, but they choose not to make it seem more like a stage play. And I fucking love it. Like it was so good,
beautiful. It's actually one of the most well done. I don't want to call it a cheap trick. It's a very well done bit, especially when he looks through the wall.
Yeah, he looks through the screen at the guy. Yeah. Yes. Oh my God, I love it so much. It doesn't make it's the kind of thing where like it's using the language of a different medium to draw attention to the fact that it's telling a story, and I love that. And it makes you like. I don't know. It almost makes it feel a little bit collaborative, like you're in on the joke that the filmmakers are telling, that like we're doing all of it wrong, like we're using all of the wrong rules, but that like if you're aware of that, it feel like it like I said, it kind of brings you in on it because you're aware of what's going on. Yeah,
it really is. I can't call it an underrated movie because
it's very underrated.
But like. It has like 18% on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah. And there's a part of me that's like, that's because you were looking for substance and you weren't getting it, which is fair.
I think that's
it's also
not what
a matter
of the
is.
time. It's got like that 18% Rotten Tomatoes is 18% of like, because most of the reviews came out in 2010, right? Well, this is not a good 2010 movie in a lot of ways. That like it kind of just wasn't where everything else was at that time. We were starting in on the whole Marvel craze at this point when like everything was getting flatter and less expressive. If this had been 10 years earlier or 10 years later, I think it would have been received differently.
Yeah. And I think I can't say better or worse, but I think it's a movie that has. I was describing it to friends earlier as, to sound a little pretentious and wrong, like directly wrong, because I know that there are better examples of a more accurate one-to-one. Sure. But it is the movie version of suddenly introducing modern art to like like normal paintings. It is
Okay.
it is a beautiful canvas. It is a well constructed frame. It is an ornate frame. Sorry,
Yeah.
like I mean, like the and like everything is just good materials and everything. And then it is an utterly blank canvas with the word landscape written across it.
Yeah.
And it's not because the creator was like, oh, you'll buy anything. It wasn't because this person thought that was the best landscape they could paint. It was because they were pointing out what's there. They're calling, like you said, calling attention to the artifice, calling attention to the theatricality and the spectacle of it all.
Yeah.
It's a demonstration.
Yeah.
It's
And
if we had half a dozen more of these movies, that would have been utterly diluted.
Well, and also like something about because this movie does not take itself seriously even a little bit. Like
I can't tell, because there are times when I'm like, ooh, you shouldn't have. That's so you know what I mean?
I mean, like, well, I don't know. I don't think I the moment that I was convinced that they knew they were making a silly movie is the moment that they put in like video game sound effects during several scenes. Like
that
the moment
fair.
when like
that is absolutely
when, like,
fair.
The guy when Josh Hartnett is breaking Gact out of prison and he's like running around a level, what looks like a video game level, and he hits a guy and you get the coin sound of like a guy getting like the coin popping up out of Mario. Yeah. I'm like, okay, this whole movie is kind of a joke, but because it's been clearly communicated to me that the filmmakers know it's a joke, then like I don't feel bad laughing at it because they meant for me to laugh at it in these times.
A friend of mine described it as being like Scott Pilgrim, feeling that scene feeling very Scott Pilgrim. And for me, I've only ever seen Scott Pilgrim like once, so I can't comment on that. But to me, what I thought was interesting about that scene in particular is there's two things. One is, man, it really reminded me of playing side scrollers.
Yeah, it was meant to.
And the other is side scroller mooks are often very easy. Yeah. And to me, it conveyed that feeling of like, we don't need a big to do here.
Yeah.
All right. This is trivial for him.
Yes.
He does this every Thursday.
Yeah.
You know, like he just walks through the whole thing. He just beats the hell out of everybody.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of like vaguely out of breath and smiling, which, by the way, headcanon that Josh Hartnett and Gackt's characters fucked nasty like immediately after this movie wrapped. There's no way they didn't. Anyway,
I remember in one of my film studies classes, my professor lamenting the way that it's very, very common in Westerns or any kind of buddy movie, but it's very common in Westerns for you have the two guys who like pair up and they do they like go on this adventure and they have an emotional connection. And then he was talking about this straight faced, but he was like, you have to always figure out how to communicate to the audience that they're not gay. Like they always have to have like, there's always got to be like a romantic thing with one of them or another one. And like, it's this like, and it was like,
the romance as a foil.
Well, like, it was as if this whole like emotional connection that you've built between these two characters that could be read as romantic would be fine if you just couldn't think of these guys if they weren't gay, it would be okay. And I'm like, dude, like fucking like think about it for 20 more seconds. Just like spend a little bit more time thinking about what you're saying, where it's like, it's fine. Like if you want to read it that way, it's just let the audience read it that way. They will be happy to do so.
not to be terminally audio drama brained, but there I was listening to like a while ways ago, probably years ago, Johnny Sims on a Q&A for Magnus Archives, and he said, there's no wrong way to interact with media. And that was before he went on to describe his intentions behind the way he wrote particular characters.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that, not just the one sentiment, but having having both together, which is, I do like hearing about what the author's intent was, because it helps me view that in a different light and see what that has to say. However, that doesn't mean that I'm going to stop having my own opinions.
This is one of the things. I mean, the phrase "death of the author" gets thrown around a lot, and it's one of those words. It's one of those. It's become a buzzword that like almost
that I hate. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like it's become so widely misused and applied in different ways that it becomes like meaningless in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But like, at its core, it was just the principle that like the author's opinion matters no more than any other particular person in society. That like they are the one who wrote it, but that doesn't give them like a there's a dog scratching at my door. Anyway, yeah, that doesn't mean that like because he wrote it, he is not imbued with special powers to discern what it means, because it will mean as much to the reader of it as it will to the author, because they in a lot of ways, when you read or watch or listen to something, you construct a version of it within yourself that's what you actually experience, because that's the way language works. You have to sort of
Do you want to check on your dog?
No, I've just been granted a puppy. Apparently, he was very upset that I was making noise in here. So.
Oh no! How dare you? How dare you, Scott? How dare you not have the dog on your lap all the time?
Because he's so disruptive. He's a puppy.
No, it's for me. It's for me. It's not for the dog. No.
Because then we'd be 2 hours into this podcast with all the puppy interruptions.
Touche. Well, I actually think that's a very good point. Do you want to keep going on that? Do you?
Oh, about Death of the Author, and then like
yes.
Well, no, just to agree with you that
because there is something I do want to connect that to, but I want to which is if I recall correctly, which I might not, that is sort of the impetus behind the modern art movement, which is getting you to think about how you approach art, and what art is, but also for modern art, whenever I have a moment of looking at a piece and going, I don't get it, I can sort of hear my mother screaming at me, well, what does it mean to, like, what do you think of when you see it? Like it's not a series of spheres like in a weird pattern as a sculpture. If you're sitting there and you're going, I don't get it. Okay, cool. What are you trying to get?
Yes.
Because if you're trying to get the author's intent, that's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is, and I'm also very fond of saying context is everything with art.
Yeah, it can be.
And, but the thing is, nothing stays firmly rooted within its own context.
Yes.
You bring as you were saying, you bring your own context with you. The context of, again, I might go to Frankenstein. Yeah. I do want to know the context behind a lot of that. I don't care about Lord Byron. But
except that he's hilarious.
People always bring that up, but I don't care that it had anything to do with Mary Shelley trying to get away from Lord Byron for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
That doesn't matter to me. I want to know more about like what she thought, like, that kind of thing. But it won't, and it will inform my opinions, but it won't tell me what they are.
Right.
Right. It can't. Yeah, exactly. Because I have her context, but I also have mine, and so her context will change. I'm overusing the word context, but her environment and her thoughts and stuff will affect mine, but it won't change how I view. It won't fundamentally. It could, but it won't. It won't
dictate to you what it will be.
Thank you.
You can't overwrite what you're saying. Yeah.
Exactly. Perfect. But it. And so this is, again, to veer into audio drama. I was talking to somebody about how, as a trans woman with, I don't have the deepest voice, but I also know that I don't get, gendered correctly on the phone ever. Whenever I audition, I do have to have moments of like, do I go for the female voice? I actually don't mind auditioning for male voices, but there are times when it's like, this is a villain.
Yeah.
I desperately want to play this villain.
Yeah.
But casting is part of your context.
Yes.
And if you cast a deeper voice trans woman as your villain and you don't have any other deep voice trans women in there, you are saying something with that casting because that is part of your context.
Yes.
And that was not really related to anything else I was saying besides the word context, but I desperately need people to hear that.
Except
so
that
if you want to cast trans women, please cast multiple.
Well, but it's one of the, because we talked earlier about everything is political in the sense that even when you don't do it on purpose, you're going to end up doing something. And if you, And so like it doesn't matter what your intention is. If you're saying like, well, it wasn't my intention to say that deep voice trans women are villains, but if that's the effect that you communicate to any number of your audience members, then you are not exactly I'm not sure about it, like it is definitely something you are doing, and you need to be aware that you're doing it and deal with the consequences thereof, and who you're going to be harming or how they're going to feel about it is definitely something you need to be aware of. And because if you think, well, that wasn't what I meant to do, that wasn't, but you did it, like whether you meant to or not, you still did it.
If I pull out of a street too fast in my car and hit somebody, I don't get to go, well, I didn't mean to hit you.
Yes.
Like, well, that's not going to unbreak this person's leg.
Yes.
You know, like that's like you still have to deal with the consequences of what happened. And the correct answer, as always, is to go, I was wrong.
Yeah.
The correct answer is to see what you did wrong, apologize for it, and do better, and point out like this is what I think, and blah 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 blah. We don't have time to go into that, but like, I think personally the most important part of that is seeing the side of it that you were incorrect. Anyway, the point is cast trans women. And cast trans men as well. Cast non-binary people. Cast as many people as you can all the time. Get 40 people in on your Zoom call. It's fine. It's fine. It never goes poorly at all. We never have scheduling errors. We never have a 45-minute window where we're all available. Nope.
The audio drama admin behind in my soul is like, oh god, dude, you can't do that. Do you want to go out? Is that the whole thing? Give me half a second. I'm going to stick him out.
Yeah.
Because he's now scratching at the door. Cat style. He's coming out.
Oh.
Yeah. I want to go in. I want to go out. He's basically a cat.
I mean, no, I couldn't think of a joke there.
No.
By the way, I do want to thank you for breathing space, just in general, for 1,000 reasons, and none of them have to do with casting me. Most of the, I mean, I know that was Jack and not you, but before I listened to Breathing Space, whenever I would lament that I don't really hear a lot of deep voice trans women in audio dramas, I would get told two things, and they were both things I already knew. And one was not an audio drama. It was Kill James Bond, which is great. Right. I love Kill James Bond, but and the other was generally stuff with Emma Laslett in it, which how aware. I know. But anyway, off track. No. I promise. We should rewind a little bit. Spectacle is important, and what you see is important.
Yes.
And the idea that there's nothing to be gained out of a surface level thing is just silly. Must a movie be good to have value? No.
Well, it's like,
I'm gonna go ahead and answer that for you. No.
I've been thinking a lot about, I don't even know how to categorize this media anymore, because the word I really am starting to rankle against the idea of something being good or not, right? Like where it's like there are different, that the good is such a again, it's such a word that's so used for so many different things that it almost becomes meaningless in terms of broadly categorizing things, because the number of people who I hear talk about something are like, well, this isn't good, but I love it. And I'm like, but if you love it, isn't that a good? It brought you joy, and isn't that a good in the world? That is in its way. You don't have to be high-minded. You don't have to be elevated. You don't have to be pretentious. You don't have to be not everything, although everything is political, not everything has to be expressly for the purpose of changing the world. It can be just no, I just wanted to do a fun thing. I just wanted it to be rad and awesome, and I wanted to make other people watch it and be happy. And that, if that's your only goal, then fuck yeah. That is a worthy enough goal in and of itself.
Yeah, I have often said I have no ability to tell whether things are good or not.
Yeah.
But I will say, it was obviously the favorite for a lot of people, including myself, is The Mummy.
Okay.
I know intellectually that The Mummy is not what would be called a good film,
Yeah.
but man, I love it. It's a fun film. It's got some problems.
Oh yeah.
But it's fun. And who was it? Was it Ebert who was saying, I hated every part of this movie except for the bit where I had fun.
Yeah.
He's like, I hated the acting, I hated the costumes, I hated the mummy, I hated the special effects, and I had a ball of a time watching this movie the whole time.
It's so interesting because the way that that movie did, I don't actually know if it did well or not. I know that it's found its footing as a classic since its release. Like, I don't think it was thought of as positively when it first came out, as it since has become sort of enshrined in people's memories as one of the best, it's just a fantastic movie. But like, I don't even know where I was going with that. No, but
no.
We've only been at this for an hour and 18 minutes. It's cool. But like, again, if it accomplishes making people happy and bringing joy to the world, then that's a good movie. Then that can be good. And it's well crafted. I don't know that it has to be, we don't need every movie to be a deep introspective, a meditation upon the nature of blah 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 bullshit. If you want to have a fun movie where some very hot people run around and have sexual tension with each other, and then also there's a mummy there, fuck yeah,
you are of course talking about Rick O'Connell in Ardith Bay, and sorry, having the sexual tension. No,
okay,
no, they all do. It doesn't matter. Yeah. So, I agree. Like, not every meal can be, Michelin star rated chef level unless you are a Michelin star chef. But
even those guys make a grilled cheese now. Yeah.
I bet you if you go in their kitchen, one of them will have a bag of chips.
Yeah.
Junk food is tasty.
Yeah.
We like cheap candies and stuff like that. Why does that have to only be the case for food?
Right. Well, and you brought up Dan Olson of Folding Ideas. I'm going to bring out Lindsay Ellis now, who has a fantastic essay about the redemption of Guy Fieri, who for a literal decade was just a laughing stock amongst popular culture as this boorish, lowbrow, basically a clown, right? Yeah. And it's in the past few years has had a complete recontextualization as not just a guy who is out there having fun and elevating the more common version of food as something that is worthy of talking about and enjoying and having people pay attention to.
I'm sorry. I gotta look up. I kept meaning to buy this book by okay. There is a book called by Rax King.
Mm-hmm.
Called Tacky, Love Letters to the Worst Culture We Have to Offer.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep meaning to read it.
Yes.
And I haven't. But I have read Rax King's earlier book, I think it's The People's Elbow, which is a lot of fun, or not a lot of fun. It is very good. I really enjoyed it. It is about trauma. So careful. But Rax King is a great author. I keep meaning to read this, and it popped up when in my head that idea of especially connecting it to Guy Fieri. In my head. But there's sorry, I don't remember where I was going to go with that.
Okay, I'm thinking of it. Is there anything else we want to cover about Bunraku before we bring this in for a landing? We talked. Okay, I do have another small complaint, which is that although I absolutely love Josh Hartnett as he's so charismatic. However,
they didn't let him be that at all.
Part of it, but also the way that character is staged, he is. The way he is supposed to fight and sort of move through the world and the way the narrative treats him, he should be 7 feet tall and 500. He should be the biggest man in the world. And instead they've got Josh Hartnett, who is a dapper little boy in a lot of ways. And
he Yeah. No, you're absolutely correct.
He's a lanky guy.
The best part of that is like later Josh Hartnett's like I think in Penny Dreadful he does look a bit bulkier.
Yeah.
He doesn't look bulky in this.
No,
like it's like
it's like if John Mulaney was like was beating people up, you know.
Have you ever looked at still images or gone back and watched The Count of Monte Cristo and seen Henry Cavill in it?
Oh no, I didn't even know.
Because he's in there.
Okay.
And you look at him and you go, great, where's the rest of him? Because he's in there as like
he's not done loading yet.
Kid. He's not done loading yet. You're like, well, that's a twink. So where is the man I'm looking for? Look him up right now. Just look up Henry Cavill, Count of Monte Cristo, and you'll be like, uh-huh. He plays Albert, I think. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Where's the rest of them?
Yeah. I recognize that as being Henry Cavill.
Yeah.
But are you sure this wasn't edited? Like, are we
like
positive?
It's like the first few scenes of Captain America, whatever, where like they've used all the digital stuff to shrink him down. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah. You're just kind of like, yeah. Anyway, Josh Hartnett, he's sort of, especially because the Western trope did depict sort of the Westerns did depict very like broad shoulders and stuff. I have a minor gripe that is not really a gripe about his costume, which is that his sleeves may look funny because they are French cuffs that are too short, so they folded them out.
Oh, okay. So the costume department failed a little bit there.
I actually don't think it was a failure because they come just to their exact right point where it's infeasible that they would be that short. Not infeasible. That's pushing it. You know, short fat people exist. That's not
sure.
But like it is very much like they are, you know, very perfect. But it looks so cool. I don't care.
Oh, okay. I mean, if it looks cool, then that's their entire driving force. Where like, you know, he wears fingerless gloves for the entire movie for no goddamn reason because it's cool. Come on, like.
By the way, there are so many people who should have gotten an award for this movie.
Yeah.
The set designers.
Yes.
The costumers. The costumers maybe should have gotten 2.
Yeah.
Actually, the set designers should have gotten 2 as well. And like, you know, the other people who should have gotten awards are people who had to deal with Woody Harrelson and. I actually don't know much about that guy. I've just heard he's kind of a dick. I actually don't know if that's true. Anyway, there are some things I do want to touch on. One of which is just that there are a lot of minor moments with Killer 2. Yeah. Killer 2 is probably one of my favorite characters from this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's got the most character, which is saying something because he's barely a character.
Right.
And there are minor things like at one point, Alexandra, played by Demi Moore, is crushing like walnuts with like a hammer uselessly because like Ron Perlman's just crushing them with his hands because he's supposed to be scary.
Yeah.
And every time she does, Killer 2 jumps.
Yes.
Which says to me one of 2 things. Either he's got PTSD, which is the actual probably like real answer that I would give if pressed, and the other is kung fu autism, which I think is the funnier answer.
Okay,
but like there are just so many more moments like that, and like his desire to fight and like stuff like that makes me kind of go, he's got something going on, and he's just got so many minor moments like that where he shows emotion in places, he gets these little outbursts. And what'd you say? I can never remember the actor.
Kevin McKidd, the actor?
Kevin McKidd, thank you. Who, honestly, he and Demi Moore brought it to this movie. Yeah. Like everybody else does fine.
Yeah.
Nobody's really like sleepwalking through a performance or anything.
No.
But like, man, like that should have given Kevin McKidd like a dozen other movies and should have continued Demi Moore's career as Demi Moore. And the and especially the two of those 2 characters interacting, Killer 2 and Alexandra.
Yeah. I would have watched a 10 episode prestige television show about the both of them. Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%. Either enemies to lovers or enemies, but there's still something there. United in bondage, but sort of
or like not enemies
united by
lovers, but like
circumstance. Yeah,
exes, but they were never together. Maybe.
Yeah, divorced despite never being married.
Yeah.
I made a joke about them hate fucking like every week, definitely. But like, there's just so many moments between the two of them that hints at like a longer history, and I kind of love it. Demi Moore also does a lot of like implying things with Nicola, and that some of that is the dialogue, and there's just so much. There's just so much to be implied from these tiny breadcrumbs. And breadcrumbs is what they are. You see a breadcrumb and you go, there was bread here. And but that's all you get. You don't get the loaf. You're just sort of like, there was definitely more here. I know, I bought it. I brought it home. The other thing is there's one inversion of a trope that they do that I really love.
Okay.
And that is that throughout the movie, Josh Hartnett keeps pulling out like a cigarette, but it's a fake cigarette.
Yeah.
And at the end, he gets a real cigarette, which is different from the normal thing, which is the hero quits smoking at the end or quits drinking at the end. And I kind of love that. It's revenge was his vice. Revenge was his
right.
His,
now he's got to.
Yeah.
He needs the nicotine as a replacement for the.
It does a lot with very little. Yeah. And it's not that the characters are doing a lot with little. It's that the construction of this movie requires very little being given.
Right.
If that makes sense.
It's like, again, they're by necessity, I think of the sort of what the movie was going for. Again, like I think that the point of it is that the media is the message, like what they're doing on the screen and the way they're telling the story is what they're concerned with. The story itself is not particularly important. And so therefore, if you put a lot of story into it, if you put a lot of thought and a lot of things and a lot of character development, you start dragging your attention away from what they're trying to do, which is show you some cool stuff and have you have and let you have time to think about why they're doing it and the way that they're doing it. And so I think a plot would hurt this movie in a lot of ways. Like if it had really well developed characters and lots of time for them to do stuff, I think that wouldn't be the same movie anymore.
No. And you wouldn't like it would take away from the sets and it would take away from the everything. It would take away from like the feel of the movie to have this in-depth thing while they're standing in front of a paper storefront. You know, and not just a paper storefront, an obviously so one that is designed to make you look at it and go paper.
Well, and you can think of it as a direct inversion of the way that most movies are, which is that most of the time the movie is trying so goddamn hard to make you forget you're watching a movie, right? That you're just going to get enraptured in the story. You're just going to get enraptured with the characters. That's why they'll spend $100 million removing the wires from every frame of a stunt so that you can like forget that it's a stunt. But like they are deliberately doing the exact opposite here, where they're like, no, the point is that we're doing this theatrically and we want you to be paying attention to every moment that you're watching this movie, you need to be aware that you're watching a story on a stage in a soundstage somewhere.
I also described to did I say this already, that like you're watching and everything about the set and the peripheral is the best word I have for it, but sort of the peripheral stuff is telling you to focus on the actors, but there's nothing there. So you start examining the structures and because I said it gives it a sort of a dreamlike quality. Not in the logic like a David Lynchian sense, but in a sort of like actual dream. There's just the weight of a pretty net can't, like we'll just, or like putting weight in a pretty net. Like I know that's a bad thing because what the fuck is a pretty net? But you know what I mean? Like lace or some shit like that. Like it at a certain point it will just damage it. At a certain point, there's a lot to be said about this movie, and there's so many things, and a lot of it is about how there's nothing there. There are, by the way, I do have a question for you that is not really related to the movie.
Sure.
The bits where, especially in the restaurant, the bits where they're speaking in Japanese, what did your subtitles look like?
Oh, they were fantastic. They were it was they were burned, like they were there on the frames, and they looked like, the best I could describe it is that it looked like somebody had like scratched a piece of white out over and then written over the type of it, maybe, is the way I would describe it.
Like little bits of scroll is always how I saw it. Little bits of parchment or something. Little scraps of paper. I just watched a version that didn't have those. It just had normal subtitles. And I was watching it and going, yeah, I guess that's because it did feel a bit odd, because every time I've seen it, I've kind of been like, is that y'all trying to be like Japanese in the style there, and sort of, but now that you said it like that, it makes me think that I was reading too much into it. So now I really want to go back and see the other version.
The thing that it did to me was like,
but I didn't know that there was a thing like that. I didn't know that they would remove that.
Yeah,
because I thought because it was such a yeah.
I wonder if there somewhere is a version of this movie for the Japanese market where they have done that reverse for all of the English.
There's no way GAC let this hit Japan. Which, by the way, I can't really judge acting very well on screen for some reason.
Sure.
But I thought he did great.
I have no problem with GAC's performance. Yeah. I mean, like, it wasn't. It's not. I was gonna say it's not Shakespeare, but Shakespeare's not that hard either. But like it's not meant to be like a, Oscar-winning performance. It's meant to be an action guy, and he fucking did it. Yeah.
He nailed it. Yeah. It made me kind of go, damn, I wonder what else he's in. I'm not gonna sit there and go, oh yeah, he'll be in something Oscar-winning. But I didn't think that about Josh Hartnett either. So and I don't want it.
There's nothing wrong with being just like a good, like a guy who shows up for a certain kind of movie and like just does a good job at like the thing that you do. I mean, like,
to bring it around to the first questions, I want to be somebody who's fun. Yeah. I don't like, and I love that. I love it when somebody is just allowing themselves to have a good time. And let me tell you, a lot of the actors in this movie are having the best time.
Oh yeah.
I bet you Kevin McKidd probably was like, man, I get to chew he didn't really chew the scenery, but he chewed the
scenery. Yeah, he did.
You can't, because it would have destroyed the scenery. Given paper.
But people eat paper.
Yeah, his spitball really. Yeah. But like, man, he chewed the scenery, but it's what the movie wanted.
Yeah,
that is exactly what that movie called for. Mm-hmm. And he delivered 100%. And I think if people, I don't know what people think of him outside of that movie, but if people thought less of him after that movie, they're straight up wrong.
Yeah, they're straight up wrong. The only thing I know him from, apparently he's been on Grey's Anatomy for forever, and that's his other big thing. But the thing I know him from is he was Lucius Farinus in HBO's Rome, which is...
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's... I would actually highly recommend Rome to people. I haven't watched it in about 10 years, so it's possible that it's not good, but I enjoyed it at the time. It's the like not reimagining. It's the like going back and being like, Rome was very horny and everybody was backstabbing each other all the time. So let's do that instead and like make it high drama. And that's fun as hell.
I mean, there's something to be said about it being fun. Mm-hmm. Like I watching garbage TV as well, you don't watch. Oh no, I'm not touching that one. The example I probably was going to give, but like Hercules.
Okay.
Like the TV show Hercules. Say what you will about the actor, I don't like him, but you watch that you watch that show not because it's art.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, but like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Not because
it's meticulous and all that stuff. No, you watch it because there's people with pun names that sound vaguely Greek or Roman. You watch it because there's jokes. You watch it because it's fun. You don't watch like Gallivant. Well, no, you should. Nobody watched Gallivant, which was the problem. Gallivant was amazing. Anyway,
I didn't make it through the first episode on Gallivant. I didn't.
Did you not
I
like
was.
it?
Yeah,
it's one of the few musicals that I like.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I love musicals, and Gallivant for whatever reason just didn't strike a chord with me. And that just may be entirely, who knows. But then again, nobody watched Bunraku either.
Nobody watched Bunraku, and it kills me because it's like every person that I've shown it to has been like, oh man, that movie was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
I remember at the time I watched this in the theaters.
Did you really?
Yes, I watched it in the theater.
That must have been a crazy good experience.
No, here's the thing. 14 years ago, me was not ready for that movie.
Okay, fair enough.
And part of that might have been the marketing. Part of it might have been my own tastes at the time. I had like maybe not developed an ability to just enjoy a movie that wasn't taking itself seriously. Maybe I thought it was going to be taking itself seriously. I don't know. But I remember walking out of it being like, what a fucking weird ass movie. I don't fucking, why did I watch that? That was strange. And then, and I hadn't even touched it in the last 14 years. And then you mentioned it. I was like, that is a weird movie. That's a weird movie. I'm going to go back and rewatch that. I've been thinking about it a little bit. What was that, a bad movie, or did I just not like it? And then I watched it again. I'm like, this is delightful. This is great.
There's also talking about like telling the same story over and over again. Guy Ritchie.
Oh yeah. Oh god.
I saw Rock'n'Rolla in theaters because my partner at the time was a projectionist, because this was still when we used film.
Yeah.
And there was, oh, by the way, I actually have a thing related to Bunraku about film.
Yeah.
But I watched it and I was like, yeah, I had a good time. Like, and people are always like, oh yeah, Guy Ritchie, he makes the same movie over and over again. And I want to say like, yes, but also no.
Yeah.
Because he changes things every time.
He does.
And so, yeah, it has the same structure, but so does every pop song you listen to. It goes 1 4 5 1 1 4 5 1. Like it's but there's joy to be had in that. There's joy to be had in that and like the minor variations therein.
I've never seen Rock'n'Rolla, but what was funny, my only memory, my only thing I know about it is that I once had a 45-minute conversation with somebody where I was talking about Revolver and they thought we were talking about Rock'n'Rolla, and neither of us was able to tell.
Oh boy,
because they're both Guy Ritchie movies.
And like that's what I'm not going to claim that he makes a completely different movie every time. No.
Yeah.
He still makes the Guy Ritchie movie.
Yeah.
But you know what? There's something to be said for changing it every time. Also, talking about spectacle and talking about film. There is a scene where Josh Hartnett's character, who by the way doesn't have a name, but my friend Griff and I have always just called him Just Passing Through. Because somebody asked him what his name is, and he says Just Passing Through. So we just kind of jokingly called him that.
That's good. So that would be a really good credits joke. Yeah, for sure.
Wouldn't it? Yeah. So Just Passing Through is at a poker game with everybody, and instead of Nicola, who's played by Ron Perlman, who, in case you didn't pick that up, is projected onto a screen with a theoretically like a film camera, because you can hear the clicking of the film camera.
Yep.
Now, he is talking to them, so he's clearly getting a live feed, and you're getting and he's getting a live feed back.
It's not a film camera. No, I can answer this stupidly. Oh. I know exactly what this actually would be in the real world. There's a real technology this could be.
You're gonna have to tell me in just a second, because there are two. There's not one, but there's two projectors behind Nicola.
Okay.
One of them has film reels on it.
Okay.
And the other one doesn't, but like the film reels are empty. So it's clear, and so I was watching it with like partners, and they were like, yeah, I mean it's for the I was bitching about it because I was like, why do you have that? And they were like, it's because it's the rule of cool. And I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, it's the aesthetic. It is absolutely everything in this movie is the aesthetic.
Exactly.
That's the whole thing.
That's
also
a good point.
One of my girlfriends had a point about connecting Woody Harrelson's character to the narrator. Which we will get into in a second. You got to tell me what technology you're thinking of.
So before we did television entirely electronically, you can do various parts of the conversion of audio of video signal into electronic pulses using mechanics instead. and that would involve things like shutters, exactly like a film reel, where you actually physically move the aperture that's being scanned over a single sensor, so that it is reporting different parts of the screen at a particular time. I saw a fantastic YouTube video of a guy trying to make one for real out of like cardboard and 3D printed parts. It was amazing.
That's fascinating. By the way, I'm so glad that you said that, because most of what I see videos of people making 3D printed parts for are their 3D printers. Like that is about 70% of what I see people making videos about 3D printing for.
You say that. I feel very attacked, because behind me is the 3D printer that I just built. And then right here is the one that I'm currently working on.
Like, I just feel like every 2 out of 3 videos that I see where people are like, I 3D printed this, it's people going, yeah, the reel doesn't really feed right, so I'm going to print a new part for it. I'm like, is that the reason you bought the printer? To make parts for the printer?
No, it does kind of do that. It's because that, like, anybody who is
I know there's other reasons.
No. It's because the kind of person who buys a 3D printer is the kind of person who's a little bit techie and wants to fix things and make them optimized and like get them like really good. And when you give somebody like that who has a tool to make more things, the first thing they do is try to optimize the first thing that they're working on. And then a lot of them get stuck in a loop where they just keep doing that over and over again, because what they want to do, they don't actually want to like make things. They want to futz around with a little project. It's basically a train set at that point.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So anyways, but he does have, sorry, to go back to the thing, he does sort of have 2 things behind him. And I like, as soon as I realized that, I had to be like, those are there for show.
Yeah.
And not just,
but the whole thing's there for show. Yeah.
Yeah. I do also, I'm so sorry to keep dragging this out, but
I'm having fun.
One of my girlfriends, Liz, was saying that she connected, she actually thought or had a theory, or I don't know how to put it into words.
Sure.
That Woody Harrelson and the narrator were connected, or were possibly the same person. And I at first I was like, no, not at all, because the voices are different. And I have a big thing about, if you have a narrator, he had better be the same voice. If he's going to be in the thing, it had better be the same voice.
Looking at you, How I Met Your Mother, although that's not the worst thing.
Yeah, that's the exact other example I was thinking. Don't worry, on the same page. So,
sorry, we're going to keep digressing.
But the thing there is that Woody Harrelson does, in fact, he makes little pop-up paper books, and they're in a big paper construction, and there is literally a scene where he sits there, and from his perspective, he runs the scissors over the outline of Gak sitting at the table. And later shows little paper cutouts of the two of them. And I thought about that, and I still see the connection between Woody Harrelson and the narrator, but I would actually say that he's not the narrator, but he is proving the narrator's point. Sure. Because he is sitting there and going, I'm going to tell this story again. Yeah. But I'm going to tell it, my way. I'm going to call it gangbusters. When he shows his pop-up book, it's very clearly ancient Greek Spider-Man.
Yeah. Forgot about that, but yeah, it absolutely is.
He calls it Arachnidus. It's great. I love it. And that's the point. The point is, just because we have the knowledge that we are retelling a story doesn't mean that nobody else knows.
Right.
Well,
and like, you have to think about the fact that until the invention of, it's not even the printing press, but like I don't even know what to call it. The sort of development of a really robust legal system that would allow corporations to protect copyright, which is kind of as much as anything else, it's like a 19th, 20th century invention. Like, until that point, all stories were collectively owned by the society. That, like, the reason why Sir Arthur Conan Doyle resurrected Sherlock Holmes is that too many people kept writing Sherlock Holmes books, and he was annoyed that people would like continue the story without him, so he had to resurrect his guy, and he's like, well, at least I'll fucking make money off of it. The same story is the reason why there exists a No, wait. They're like the most famous sequel to Don Quixote is a completely unauthorized, just some guy fucking wrote it because he thought it would be fun. And it's also a really good example of a person completely fucking missing the point. And like, it's like,
did you really?
Yeah, it's like because
Don Quixote is making fun of a particular type of novel that Cervantes also wrote.
Yes, exactly. So it's like Don Quixote to us is like if the only part of if the only thing that survived from all of or that was the only thing that was still well known from all of superheroes was Watchmen, right? Like it's the deconstruction, or maybe that's a bad example because it's not exactly a parody.
Mystery Men.
Mystery Men, much better example. Yes, it's as if Mystery Men was the only thing to survive this huge era. And so it's this weird contextless thing. But yeah, so like somebody else wrote that, and they wrote like the straight non-parody version of a continuation of that story as though it wasn't a satire and everything should be taken seriously.
No.
Yeah, it's real bad.
My ex was big on Don Quixote actually being like fairly good about actually being the knight that he thought he was.
Oh, sure.
But like, while fully also recognizing the point of the book.
Well, the point is that he does all of the actions that a knight errant should do. It's he's no longer within his context, to bring us back to something we were talking about earlier. And now it's all wrong what he's doing because the world has changed.
Yeah. Which actually, let's try that again, but with the real word in place. Actually, reminds me of a couple of things which I thought of, and one of whom I brought up at the start, which is Philip Glass, which is he likes to make not a riff, but like a melody, and it'll repeat, and it'll repeat, and it'll repeat. And just when you're getting used to it, he'll change a note, he'll swap something, he'll do whatever. And if I recall correctly, he was influenced by another artist that I really, really like named Moondog, who was a blind percussionist who made his own instruments and would dress like a Viking and play on the streets of New York, as one does. And the story I heard goes that like, that somebody connected to the New York Philharmonic heard him and was like, do you want a job? But he has all these albums, and he's long dead. But like one of his songs made it onto the soundtrack for the Big Lebowski.
Okay.
It's called Stamping Ground. It's really good.
Cool.
Anyway, but and he's sort of considered an outsider artist because some of his songs sound like normal songs, and some of his songs are just sort of a beat played in a very particular way. But some of my favorites of his are him playing a particular steady rhythmic beat, and then a melody is played over top of it, but the melody is a slightly different length.
Okay. Yeah.
And so as it and so while the melody does repeat, as it plays, it's shifting along that rhythm. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I've always sort of enjoyed that. I've loved how that changes the feeling of both the melody and the beat.
Yeah.
I love how that feels. And so that's another case of, not to compare a genius artist to Bunraku, but like it that feeling of yes, it's the same thing as before, but because we've shifted it, because we have changed just a little thing, it feels different. And even though you know all the steps, you know how to dance to it, figuratively speaking, you know where this goes, it has still changed, and you can't avoid that.
Well, and like the ability to tell or to take a piece of art and then iterate on it is something that like certain genres do better than others. Movies, for example, are kind of bad at it. The cycle time on them is very long because it takes us about 20 years usually to make the movie again, unless you're doing John Wayne films in the 60s. But like we're now remaking Ghostbusters, and we did Total Recall a little while ago, and they're and Dune, we're doing Dune again, but we had to wait a long time for somebody else to come in and take another version of it. And other mediums don't have that problem nearly so much. I think that music is a really good example of a medium where iterating on an idea is much more commonplace. So very famously with sampling, but also with like things like covers. Like the cover song is something that like every band does. Like they all play everybody else's music, and when they do so, it's never exactly the same. Even if they're trying to make it an accurate representation, just the different vocal timbre of a new singer changes the context of a song. And sometimes you change the genre entirely. And like you take them. Yeah, go ahead.
No.
Yeah.
This is perfect. I actually have like a thing that's related to this, which is I often like to ask people what their favorite cover of Jolene is.
Oh.
And by the way, my answer to that is the one by Me First and the Gimme Gimmes.
That's a really good one. Man, I would have a hard time. Honestly.
Exactly. No. It's the same song. Oh, by the way, speaking of context and trans women, Jolene sung by a trans woman is a heartbreakingly different song.
Oh, I bet. Oh my God. Yeah.
Like just thinking about that. Like, anyway, sorry.
My answer to that question though is specifically the version that is actually Dolly Parton just slowed down, where somebody literally took a record. The thing I'm thinking of is a YouTube video that I saw on early YouTube, where somebody literally took a record player and took it from 44 to 33 and like starts playing and it changes. It makes it slows it down, but it also changes the pitch of the key that it's in and everything. And that simple like switch of recontextualization is brilliant because it completely changes the song. And I love that it's very explicit that they're only changing one aspect of it, but it completely changes the song. And I love that version so much.
Also, I've seen people post videos of Dolly Parton slowed down alongside clips of Hozier being sped up.
Okay. I bet that's good.
And it's not like, oh, that's the same, but like, man, they're close. And that's actually really interesting as well when it comes to acting, which is something I'm still like learning and feeling my way through, which is you can just change the way you say a line and it just sounds like a completely different person. And that's something I've known, but like it really comes out sometimes when you just change the minor thing like that, or accents are bigger, but like sounding more confident sounds like it just gives you a different person.
And within like even just like there's the old thing of just changing what emphasis you put on one word versus another word changes the context of the sentence. And so these little tiny changes are amazing in how much of a difference they can make. I've often joked about we unfortunately it would be too much effort to actually do because it's basically just a bit. But I would love.
That's what Bunraku is. It's a concept.
It's a high effort bit.
Yeah. But I will say this.
I was just going to let me
had to be made. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, but I was going to say it would be so fun to do because I have often when doing casting for Breathing Space, I look at my list of people and I'm like, I have 3 episodes worth of actors here. I could cast this episode all the way through 3 times over and still produce a good one every time. And so I've often joked that like we could do like musical chairs versions of episodes where we have other people, we have different actors come in and do all of the same roles again and just see how different it would be. Because we own the IP, we'd be able to do that. But unfortunately, I don't think many people would be willing to listen to the same episode over and over again. And or like also the decision of like which one would you do, because you can't do everything that way, and it just becomes it's too much of a headache. But like I still think of it, I'm like, I would love to hear this other actor do this part, and stuff like that.
There's always been a part of me that for some shows that has made me want to like listening in and going usually for shows that I've auditioned for and didn't get a part for, I do like to listen because, I want to see, like closer, like not just was I, far away from it, but also what changes can I attempt, not for next time, but for a similar role? What kind of things can I try? I do it a lot with the stilt verses where I'm listening and I'm listening to how everybody is, doing minor things like something that I picked up from the stilt verses actually again is if somebody's giving an emotionally charged speech, it's rarely the same emotion the entire time.
Oh yeah.
And I know that's a minor thing, but like I haven't taken an acting class since the year 2000, so you're gonna have to cut me some slack.
Yeah.
And like just a small thing like that, like sounding angry and then for just half a sentence sounding a little bit close to tears can completely change a whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
But like also listening in, and it does sometimes make me want to go, man, I want to hear what other people did. But I only want to hear what other people did if they agreed to it. You know what I mean? Like there are times where I just want to be like, can y'all just like put out things to like let me hear how this character started? Like even if it's just like the auditions for the people who got the parts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the people who actually got the part and say like, how did this change from audition to execution? Like I went back and somebody asked me like, who I was playing, and I was like, I play this character, and I wanted to show them like the voice, but I wasn't feeling very good, so I went to go find my audition file, and I listened to it, and I went, that's not how Rapid Egress sounds anymore. Yeah. Like the voice is the same, but like that's when you hear the line said in the thing, it's going to sound different because it got slowed down, or I rethought a thing, or whatever.
Well, and also just time and skill. Like I've been doing Yuri long enough that I went back and listened to Rat Among Falcons the other day, and I'm like, oh, that's a different voice now. Like Yuri was like a kind of higher up here, and then like the newer one I've done in this thing is it goes way down and it's real throws. And it's like, oh crap, I just like drifted over time, not intentionally.
I have, by the way, I love Yuri, and if you kill off Yuri, I will visit Texas. You will not like me visiting Texas. No,
I keep telling people that if you telling me how emotionally damaged you'll be by me killing him is not the way to get me not to kill him. No.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I would be like, damn it, Scott, but I would also probably still listen to that episode over and over again. Bunraku is far from flawless in its execution of its own concept as well, because there are lines that like they should be bland, but because they're not bland, because they're bad, they stick out. There's a whole scene where Ron Perlman as Nicola is trying to be like, I should give you a child. It's just really weird. And there's some implications before that she's already pregnant. Yeah. Because she says a thing about like, there's an evil growing inside me and it's kicking. And you're like, okay, so you're pregnant. Yeah.
I think she knows she's pregnant and he doesn't, but I don't think it matters for the plot because
it really doesn't.
Yeah, it really doesn't.
But like just that scene and the bit where he's like, you see these hands and you're like,
yeah,
I know Ron Perlman's doing what he can with this, but there is only so much. And it's one of those things where those flaws in a better movie would be more pronounced.
Oh, sure.
Those flaws in not a better movie, in a
movie that was taking itself more seriously.
Movie that was taking itself more seriously and put a lot more effort into character and dialogue and stuff like that. Those things would stand out. But because it is what it is, it's a stained glass window. You see the thing and you're like, well, that's fine. Like, I mean, okay, stained glass window is a bad example. Those things are intense. Yeah. But like it's like, yeah, it's just the barest minimum of a movie. And so those things do sort of take you out of it a little bit, but they take you out of it not because they are bad, but because they are moving the needle from bland to one side or the other. Yeah. If it was really good, like if there was really good dialogue in there, it would hurt the premise a little bit. If there's really bad dialogue, it would hurt the premise. Yeah. But if it's just a little bit bad, that's fine. Yeah. Well, and like if it's just a little bit good, it makes you wish for more, and you just can't have that. Yeah. But you can have it to be just a little bit not good, and mostly just meaningless.
Well, and like Bunraku is that category of movie to me that is super interesting. I love a lot because it has so many flaws, that it invites you to think about what it's doing and why it fails and where it fails and all of those things. And that is so much more engaging a topic to discuss and to learn from. Like watching Bunraku has given me more ideas to chew on for other projects than, you know, movies that I love that are incredibly well put together. You know, like I think I talked about this with another guest, but like the movie The Princess Bride. The movie Princess Bride is, in my opinion, a perfect movie. It has flaws, yeah, but I can't see those flaws because I watched it when I was 4 and I've watched it every fucking year since, and I love it too much. And so there's no way for me to engage with how I might learn from The Princess Bride, because when I look at The Princess Bride, I'm like, well, the only thing I learned how to do that from this is how to make The Princess Bride, and somebody already did that. So, but something like Bunraku, where I'm like, okay, there are flaws here, so I can actually get my teeth into what's going on here.
Yeah. And not only are there flaws and like I can see what those flaws are, you start going, how would I have done that better?
Exactly.
How would I have done it differently? And then also the things that are good that stick out, you go, why do I like that?
Yes. And how can I do my version of that? You know, because I'm not going to do that version, but could I learn something from this, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And actually that does go back to something that we said at the beginning of 2 hours ago. Jesus Christ. I will try to cut it short after this.
Yeah.
But like that idea of reading a thing and not being able to come up with your questions until you run into an obstacle.
Yes.
And you know, an obstacle in the case of Bunraku is just seeing the seams and going, well, I know how to paint over that. Like, paint. You use too many idioms, but like I know, you know, how would I do that? You know, would I have done this? Would I have changed that? Like, when it brings that to mind, you can start really going, hey, you know, how would I do this?
And I think it lands in that territory because it fucking swings for the fences. This movie is I love that, like, every choice they made, they never went like, well, what's like the safe option? They pretty much from the get-go were like, what's something that we can do that's different, that's cool, what's going to be the awesome? I don't care if it works all of the time, but I definitely don't want to like just phone it in ever, even a little bit.
Yeah.
And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. Like I said, you know, sometimes the sound effects don't work. Sometimes the script doesn't work. You know, it could have used a punch up, but if it had been punched up by a really good Hollywood punch up writer, it would have sounded like all of the other weird Hollywood, all the, you know, same jokey Hollywood movies. You know, they would have put in, you know, the undercutting cynicism that shows up in the Avengers, you know, and like it would have been a lesser movie for it, you know.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And man, that's a good point. Like I lost my train of thought.
It's okay.
Already.
I think we both.
I think we probably have more than anybody has ever talked about this movie ever before. But like, I mean, by the way, minor point. I don't know. I had to have this pointed out to me. Every single time Josh Hartnett touches his hat and does like the brim slide, it's the sound of revolver cylinder being
so
spun.
much. It's such a stupid thing. It doesn't make
it happens twice in one scene.
It doesn't make any sense because guns aren't in this movie, but he's a cowboy, and so you want the noise, and so you just came with an excuse to use it, and I fucking love that. It's so dumb.
What about the elevator into the casino? That's a
big revolver. This is what I'm talking about. Swinging for the goddamn fences. They're just like, why not? Let's do it. Okay. There.
Can I point out one scene that I do complain about every time?
Yeah, please.
And it's complaint in the most fun sense of the word, which is they've had a car chase. And they've been caught up by a guy who I can't remember if he's actually one of the killers or if he's just sort of some guy. But I want to say he's a killer. I think it's 2 killers.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's killers 1 through 10 or 1 through 9 or whatever. That's the enemy. That's the bad guys. And that's actually, I think, deliberate, which is they don't have a name. They're just the killers.
If I have an objection, I think 9 was too many because they gave us 2 minutes. Like I kept seeing them show up and then immediately die. And I'm like, well, why wasn't it killer? Why don't we only have 6 killers? Give me a little more time with the killers. It's fine.
there's a scene towards the end where like two of them show up and like cut through a bunch of people and then just like have like half a scene each where they just get the shit pummeled out of them.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the part of the movie that where the writers went, oh shit, we've got killers to go through. like
oh crap!
This is where the movie remembered that it has things that it needs to put out.
We already said 9 killers so many times, and that shit's in the can. So fuck it, we got to put 2 in here.
Yeah. You and you and
you're killers now.
How are you with dying? Yes, great. But there's a scene. So Yoshi is like, played by Gact, is like, I'll fight. Like they get out of the car and the two like motorcyclists pull up, and I just love this sort of like practical moment of like Yoshi and just passing through, talking with each other and going, I'll take that one. And the other was like, yeah, all right. So Yoshi takes
the one that Josh Hartnett gets is a circus man.
And the best part is, so the guy that Yoshi's fighting has 2 swords on his back. He's right there. He is ready to fight. And if you try to leave, he's going to kill you, right? Yeah. The guy that Josh Hartnett goes to fight leaves the area. He walks. He is not following Josh Hartnett. No. He's not following anybody. He walks away. He walks into a circus tent.
Because his weapon is circus, and he needed to go arm himself, and Josh Hartnett is a gentleman who will only fight an armed man. So he got leave. He's like, well, I guess we're going to the circus now.
What's your weapon? The trapeze. And if you think I'm joking, I'm not. There's literally trapeze. And there's the 2, like, you know, you've got like the 2 ladders all the way up to the platforms. By the way, it has already been established very barely at this point that Josh Hartnett's character has a fear of heights. I'm like, just don't follow him up there. Don't follow him up there. Set it on fire. Leave. Shut the tent. Don't something. If he won't fight you up there anywhere else, then fuck him. He's not a killer anymore. So he follows him into this tent, and he's got the big setup, and the guy like tauntingly climbs a ladder, which sounds like a joke, but it's a thing.
Yeah.
And climbs all the way to the top, and Josh Hartnett, instead of just waiting at the bottom, like, okay.
Yeah.
Have fun up there. Bye. Like a normal person would. He climbs up, again, fear of heights, climbs up the, not the same one, the other one.
So that they can swing down and smash into each other.
And collide, and then have a fight on the net trampoline. Which Josh Hartnett, of course, wins, but he shouldn't. And actually, the best part of that scene is after he wins and he goes to get off and he just like flops onto the ground.
It's so dumb.
It is the most contrived thing in a movie full of contrivances. Like,
yeah.
Like, you're just like not contrived, I shouldn't say that. It is the most set up thing. Like, he just follows him in. I'm just like,
just don't do that.
My dude.
Although
like,
I like
Woody Harrelson's with you. He's got a lighter. Just set the tent on fire. That man's not coming out.
But like this is the rules of the universe. Like later on, they're going through they're going through Nicola's like mansion or whatever, and they like come to like 2 different doors, and they both open their door, and there's a version of them. There's like just another cowboy guy and another samurai that they've just managed to. And they're like, okay, I guess I'm fighting you now, just in mirror universe. And like, because that's how it has to
trope.
be.
Yeah, you have to fight your mirror.
Yeah.
Which I did actually really like that scene. That,
I love it.
That like Josh Hartnett and like his mirror are this big involved fight scene, whereas like Yoshi and the other samurai are sort of just like very slowly like
they do the one strike and then the guy falls over.
Which is fairly classic very classic for the genre of the samurai film, but. I rewatched Yojimbo and like no other samurai movies last week. I had intended to watch more, but anyway. And his fights in that are far more frantic.
Yeah.
And I kind of love. By the way, I do vaguely recall Fistful of Dollars, and I think it's very interesting because, as I recall, Fistful of Dollars, Clint Eastwood's very taciturn.
Yeah.
In Yojimbo, is that Toshiro Mifune? It doesn't matter. He jokes. He like chuckles and he laughs and he's very active. And it's just a very interesting thing to then see in Bunraku where Josh Hartnett's, sorry, I'm only comparing this to one other movie I can remember.
That's fine.
But like Josh Hartnett's character is very taciturn until he gets hit with an axe.
Yeah.
And then Yoshi's character has a lot more range of emotion.
Yeah.
Beyond just he does have mostly anger.
Yeah.
It is mostly anger. But like that's still more of a range than Josh Hartnett has.
For men will go on a rampage and get hit with an axe rather than go to therapy. So
yeah. Also, just as an aside, the axe that Nicola uses is a weird combination of a woodcutter's axe, of a wood axe, and a people axe.
Yeah.
Which I find fascinating from a prop design perspective. And it belongs to in a movie with more focus on that.
Yeah.
But it also belongs in this movie very much.
They make a lot about him being a woodcutter, and then it kind of ends up not mattering.
No, it doesn't.
The
only thing it matters is that he has a woodcutting scene against a beautiful backdrop.
Yeah.
Oh, another thing, old practical effect that they use is they get in the car that is very obviously stationary and they project on the back the thing while Josh Hartnett is being driven around by a man who looks suspiciously like Jack White. But like just that feeling of like that is so different and so obviously what's happening.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But
it's drawing its attention to its artifice again. Yeah.
Yeah. And not only that, but it normally a bad effect in a very seriously taking itself movie takes you out of what's happening.
Right.
But in this case, it's still communicating to you, we are moving.
Yes.
It is telling you we're going to a different place, and it's very nakedly doing so.
Yes. And in that way, drawing you into the collaborative process of experiencing the story, because you're sort of having to tell it to yourself based off of the cues they're giving you.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. I'm gonna try to cut us here.
Yeah,
because we will both keep talking about this for the next 27 years. I feel like, and
we're bringing it on a landing.
This has been so much fun. I want to watch more movies with you, man. Like if you want to watch Hudson Hawk next, let me know.
Well, I do not know what my third season looks like, but when it comes around, you're definitely getting a call. Real quick before we let the audience go, where can people find you if they want to hear more from you?
They can largely find me on Twitter. Mm-hmm. It is called Twitter and nothing else.
Yeah. The one acceptable dead name.
Yes, the one acceptable dead name at Hera Alexander VA. Mm-hmm. I am on some other social media at the moment, but I'm sort of neglecting my Blue Sky because I might change it, so I don't want to give a thing. Oh, yeah. And you will pry my Tumblr out of me if you know me, but I'm not sending you there. Well, if you don't.
Are there any projects you want to plug while you're here too?
Besides Breathing Space, and an upcoming project called Waterlogged, mm-hmm. Which I believe is also a Law of Names.
Cool.
That I have a narration in.
Cool.
I am also in an actual play called Three of Hearts, mm-hmm. Where we play a game called Space Kings that uses a deck of cards instead of dice. It's fantastic.
Awesome.
Very queer, very relaxed. I'm like 30 something episodes in.
Awesome.
For like 3 episodes. So
cool.
You know, you'll have some stuff to chew on.
Yeah.
And maybe eventually one day, if I ever get it done, a story about a werewolf girl who finds a sentient spaceship in a cave.
Oh, cool. Awesome. That sounds rad.
Yeah, I do want to talk to you about that some other time.
Yeah. We'll okay, real quick. We're gonna let the audience go. But there's no schedule for this. It'll just come out sometime. So bye. See you, audience.
All right. Peace. Yeah.
Thank you again to Hera for talking to me about Bunraku for quite a lot longer than one would imagine. This is kind of a repeat of the discussion about Sucker Punch, but just, I don't know, positive this time. Anyway, If you want to support our show, tell a friend, convince them to maybe give it a listen. Or if you want to support us monetarily, head on over to patreon.com/cursedknowledge, where you can find more shows from our network at our website, library.horse. One of the best purchases I ever made. Join us next week when we talk. Join us next time when we'll be talking to Ariel, my actual real-life wife, about Bambi, which is a strangely horny movie. So long.